Oh, I did not mean to start recording. Okay. Can you tell I'm filming everything in literally one day? I have a very exciting announcement to make. I fucking did it. And after years of trying to do it, I fucking did it, and it was so by accident. Let's get into it. Let's talk about it. Let's spill the tea. Obviously, you saw the title. When I was first getting started on social media in 2020, the second piece of content I ever had an intention of making was actually around squirting. I dove in and did a shit ton of research because I was really fascinated in this idea that essentially there are two types of liquid that we call squirt. I've talked about homologs a lot on this Patreon and the fact that in utero, biological women and biological men are the same until a certain point. So we have a lot of the same parts, they just develop differently. So the way that when biological men, people with penises, ejaculate, sperm meets with seminal fluid. Some people with vaginas have seminal fluid that comes out of the Skene's glands. The Skene's glands are the homolog of the male prostate. So for the people who experience what is called female ejaculation that comes from the Skene's glands, this is usually milky white, it's usually thicker. This milky white fluid is usually smaller in volume. This is called true female ejaculate. Not every person who has a vagina actually has Skene's glands themselves, so is actually capable of doing this first type of squirting. The whole is squirt pee debate. Yes, there can be some pee in this true female ejaculate, but that's mostly from leftover pee in the urethra, because it does come from the urethra the same way that male ejaculate comes from their urethra. So calling it pee is kind of comparable to calling male cum pee. To me, I think that's kind of dumb. There's literally pee in most pre-cum, like from penis owners. So the second type of squirting is actually more comparable to pee. It has more watered down watered down urine in it. The other type of squirting is true squirting. Yeah, this second type of squirt comes from the bladder. So usually it is odorless. It's usually mostly just water. This is like more similar to what is often being replicated in porn, though a lot of porn stars do train themselves to pee on command. So this type of squirt is clearer, it's more voluminous, like there's more of it comes out, it squirts out more often. But also it doesn't have to be literally squirted out. It can be like a gush, it can be like a... There is so little research on squirting, and the most comprehensive example of research is by actually my professor at the moment, Dr. Jana at NYU. I actually have been following her for such a long time, and part of the reason that I started following her was because she was in the midst of a giant squirting survey. And part of the reason that I ended up not originally making the content that I wanted to make back in 2020 is because I found this video of hers, which was the most comprehensive video around squirting. It literally had all of the information I was going to include and more. And I was like, okay, I don't really need to make this content because it already exists in the world. She deleted it. Let me see if I can find it. I found it.
What is squirting?
So it's said that all women, all people with vaginas, whoever is saying these things, they say that everyone can squirt. I don't like sweeping generalizations like that. And I really, for a long time, thought that I couldn't. And even though I've discovered that I can, I don't necessarily think that all people can, because I don't think all people can do any given thing. Studies have varied. There are studies that show that a minority of women can squirt, but there are people in the field of sexuality who deem themselves squirting masters, example being Kenneth Play, who have like a 94% rate of being able to make his partner squirt. So it could be more about technique than ability, but either way, the jury's still out. Now, I want to talk about my experience with squirting. I knew that in order to optimize my chances of squirting, I would have to engage in some G-spot stimulation. Hence why I've been getting more into G-spot stimulation. Ioba Toys massager, Oh My G is my favorite G-spot toy. just because it really just presses down on your G-spot. You don't have to deal with the vibrations, the rumbling. Those sensations aren't necessarily super pleasurable to me, especially if they're really hard. So I think that was like holding me back. My other G-spot toy is the Aurora Vibalessa, and I just don't think it's a toy for me. Or maybe the Diosa. It's one of their G-spot toys. It's one of their rabbit vibrators. I don't think it's the one for me. So I like this one because it was a little bit more simple. So G-spot stimulation is a huge factor. The come hither motion being what causes most people to squirt. So I was trying it in the comforts of my home and experimenting around for a while, not out of like, oh my God, like it would be so much hotter if I could squirt, like I'm a failure of a woman because I can't squirt. Like, no. Bodies do what bodies do. It's not that deep. It's not that deep. And I think women who can squirt so often are like, God, I wish I didn't do this, like pee, I'm so embarrassed. And women who can squirt are like, that's so fucking cool. I wish I could just have that like release. And it's really just in every walk of life, we've been trained to want what other women have, what we don't have, to think of ourselves as inadequate. I think it's just another example of that. You are perfectly fine in your squirting, you're not squirting. I hope that you're experiencing pleasure regardless. I wanted to test the limits of what my body could and couldn't do, especially as a sex educator, to be able to share with people. Anyway, so working by myself on this mission wasn't really panning out, and so I kind of just gave up on it. And I was like, that's cool, I just can't do it. And I don't really care, that's fine. When I ultimately did do it quite recently, there were two factors that I think contributed heavily. The first being that I had a clitoral orgasm before I squirted. So this was a scenario in which I was with a partner and I had a clitoral orgasm and then continued to have penetrative sex afterwards. The second factor, I was high as shit. I don't get high. I don't smoke weed. Every once in a while, I do it, like once every like year or 2 years. I do it just to experience, just to feel something. I don't know. I did reach down to try to see what kind of squirt it was. It didn't appear to be milky, but at the same time, it wasn't like on any my sheets, or I didn't collect it or anything. It was on my body, my partner's body. So I couldn't really tell, and it wasn't like cups of liquid. I do kind of maybe think that it was the first type of squirt, the Skene's glands, female ejaculate, whatever you want to call it, but who knows? Oh, third factor, I also was experiencing cervical stimulation, and I do think that maybe that also contributed as well. It's been a new thing for me, experiencing cervical stimulation. At first, I honestly found it somewhat unpleasant, and then I was like, wait, this actually feels really good. I think it's like literally an acquired taste. Like I think it's just something you have to get used to. Cervical stimulation, that's something to explore. Some people really like it, some people really don't. Really getting all the way back in there. But it can be a point of pleasure. Oh yeah, Tara and editing here. But I also, when I had like imagined squirting before, was really looking forward to it because I thought it was gonna feel like a release. Like I feel like when I see people with penises like ejaculate, I get kind of jealous because there's no like physical release for me. And so that's what I thought squirting was going to be. But when I did squirt, it didn't so much feel like anything, also because it wasn't accompanied with an orgasm, but all I felt was like all of a sudden I couldn't really feel anything on my G-spot anymore. Like I had all this feeling in my G-spot, and then as soon as I squirted, it was like gone. So that's what it felt like. But yes, I squirted. That's everything you might want to know about that.